Hello and welcome to the Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min podcast network. Man United have won 3 games in a row. I'm Scott Saunders, joined as ever by Rob Blanchette. Rob, that's weird to say, isn't it? Man United have won 3 games in a row. Crazy.
It's shocking, is what it is. 3 games in a row after seeing what we saw against Brentford. But no, a good start to the season now. This is kind of creeping towards. And thankfully, the end of the transfer window.
Yeah, it is the day after the transfer window closes. United actually made 2 deadline day signings, even though we knew who they would be. What we're going to do in today's show is rate the transfer window and grade each transfer on, I think, Rob's, your pitch is to do it on price and player. So we'll go in that direction and reflect on how United's transfer window has gone overall, because we know that they've had a public pursuit of Frenkie de Jong, which has in the end resulted in nothing. But strip the context away, it's not been that bad. We'll be talking earlier in the show as well about the win at Leicester, what the wins are built on, because we've seen something in United over the past couple of games at the very least, and against Liverpool, to be fair, built on defence. Perhaps there's some players like Scott McTominay is doing all right at the moment. And then we'll look ahead to the Arsenal game at Old Trafford on Sunday. I'm itching to see Casemiro's first start. I was hoping it would come last night, but it didn't. Maybe he will be rotated in for the Arsenal game. Arsenal top of the league, 5 out of 5. Can United end that record with a win and go within 3 points of them? And even, they continue building off this basis and they continue grinding out results. You never really know how far they can go. But Man City, obviously, the favourites for the league. I'm not saying United are going to go and challenge for the title or whatever. I think I would take top 4. And with the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool not being too great at the moment, maybe there's a chance. But yes, we'll talk later in the show about the transfer window as well. And just a reminder, you can subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes. And you can watch us on YouTube twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. So head over to the channel, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and join the community. And the link should be in the description of this episode if you're listening on an audio platform. And on Twitter, @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiselandMU for the show is where you can catch us giving opinions all the time on Man United, their transfer business, matches, etc., etc. But Rob, what did you make of the Leicester game then? Because United weren't great again, but it's unlike United, especially over the last 18 months, to not play very well and still win, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a tale of 2 halves, wasn't it? Because I think the first half, they read the script. They did it all pretty spot on in terms of their pressing, their attitude. Obviously, fantastic goal from Jadon Sancho in transition. Typical Man United in terms of their strengths. And in the second half, they came out and they all looked a little bit jaded and soft and a little bit tired. I think one player that really epitomised it for me was Marcus Rashford. So Marcus Rashford in the first half, full of energy, running, pulling into the channel, helping out, incredible run for the goal to get Jadon Sancho in. Second half, I don't know if you noticed it, Scott, if any of our audience noticed it, but Ten Hag was in his technical area around the hour mark, absolutely spitting bullets at Marcus, telling him to run. And it wasn't that Marcus didn't want to run. He couldn't run. He didn't look fit. He was and really chugging. And I think he had a good 20, 25-minute spell. But that was kind of indicative of the whole team. They just kind of, I don't want to use the word switched off, because I think that, again, makes us sound that we think the team doesn't try or doesn't want to try. But you can see that to play Ten Hag football for 90 minutes, you're going to have to be super fit. And this is where the Ronaldo question comes into it, because I think you see now with Cristiano, he runs for 2 minutes and he looks like he's on Bambi legs. And it's a tough style of football to play, isn't it? So overall, you didn't play brilliantly over the 90 minutes, but you won. And that's okay. This is what Man United need to learn now, is that if you don't put the performance in for whatever reason, you get the result. 1-0 is always a good result.
Yeah, Ten Hag said, but even before the season started, I think that winning was the most important thing. As much as he wants to implement his style, it will take time. And he's retained, even through the last 3 wins after the games, that, this will take time. The players are still learning, they're still adapting. There's a long way to go. I think changes need to be made to the team. We obviously know who those players are. United have now signed them. I think they're quite missing Martial as well, actually. I really think that there was sometimes the ball was bouncing off Marcus Rashford, or you wouldn't really be able to hold it and allow other players to come into the game in the final third. I think Martial, it's a shame that he's injured, because I think he would probably be able to do that a little bit better. But you said there, Rob, you didn't want to say switched off. And I agree, because, we got a bit of stick for being a little bit negative on the show a few weeks ago. I'm not feeling negative at all. Somebody tweeted me last night, blue skies, with a little question mark. Yes, that's how we're looking at it. That's how I'm looking at it anyway. And it's also worth caveating it with, before we, speak more positively about United, Leicester, not very good at the moment. But you have to do that job. United have to do that job, and they did that job. And I think the thing that United have had in common in their last 3 games, the Brentford loss 4-0 was a fork in the road. It was a real fork in the road. I think Ten Hag saw that and was like, right, I'm making my changes now. And United have a back 5 of David De Gea, Diogo Dalot, who's playing really well, actually, Rafa Varane and Sandro Martinez, and Tyrell Malacia. And this looks as strong a back 4 as we've seen in a long time. And especially the centre-back pairing. Seems like these wins are built on, the spirit that they have and the love for defending. It was epitomized in one tackle Diogo Dalot made in the second half, bounced off Harvey Barnes, and they just went mad because they defended it quite well. It's refreshing to see, actually, isn't it, Rob?
Very refreshing. And we've talked a lot over the last few months about personality. If you haven't got personality in your ranks, you must go out and buy it. So this is what I think United have tried to do in this window, not just trying to increase the technical capabilities of these players, but having players that really want it. That players will come in and from day dot go, this is what I do, this is how I play, and I'll live and die by that. So like you just mentioned there about kind of the back 4, there's no doubt that Martinez and Rafa Varane have some kind of chemistry. You can see that from the early days. There is an attitude, an experience, a kind of camaraderie that's there from day dot. And for any manager, that's what you want to see. And we don't really want to go back to the kind of to the Maguire-Lindelof scenario, because injuries might push you that way eventually. But you can totally see the difference between that, what we talked about over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and how bad they are as a pair, to this 2 who've only played a short period together, but have got completely different outlooks on the game. Completely different outlooks. It's like they play different sport, Scott. Really is.
It's crazy.
So you see, So Martinez is 5'9", but Martinez, with the ball's in the air, he's not going to lose it. If he can, he's going to go for it. He's a vicious type of centre back. He's going to push it. He is the butcher. So
So you called him Butch, yeah?
Already, I'll call them Rafa and Butch. That's their nicknames now. # Rafa and Butch. And I think that every good team is built on a good centre-back pairing. So, you can have elite players all across the pitch, but if your centre-backs are soft and slow and don't make the right decisions, you might lose games. And I think that's where United were last year, isn't it? You can have the best striker of all time at the top end of the pitch, but if you've got a soft core, you're probably going to fall down the table. So I think it's really promising to see those 2 players lead the way, because they are the captains. They don't need the armband, but Varane and Martinez are the 2 that will dictate everything from the back, and you can see that. And you just said there about the Dalot tackle. You see all these high-fiving. This is deliberate. You can see they've talked about this and gone, we're going to outwardly show that when we do a good defensive action, we're going to celebrate it, because if you do that, it gives you the impetus to do it again. So really, really promising with that. But this is what I mean about Leicester. You said the Leicester not very good. They're not very good. You're obviously in a bad place. They've not made signings to kind of bolster themselves. But Man United are starting to implement this new way of football under Erik Ten Hag. And it's not perfect, but it's getting you results.
I don't know if you saw it, Rob, but there was Rafa Varane did an Instagram post after the game, and Lisandro Martinez left a comment, and he said, "It's a pleasure to play alongside you, brother." Which is really nice, isn't it? You know, Rafa Varane, very experienced, has won pretty much everything there is to win. Lisandro Martinez, obviously, I think he's mid-20s, but you know, you would have seen, especially at a young age, Rafa Varane at the top of the game, and you know, it's just really good to see that relationship developing. We've got Malacia, who's a young left back, and Dallo, who's starting to really come into his own. And I think this one's pretty settled. And Europa League's coming up, so maybe that's when we'll see the rotation. But you know, United have a few different options now, and they can fall back on the back four of last season, actually. Wan-Bissaka, Luke Shaw, Maguire, and Lindelof to deal with the Europa League. Maybe. I think they play their first game next Thursday. So, yeah, encouraging. We've seen now Cristiano Ronaldo is staying at Man United. The transfer window's closed despite all the noise. We await his interview or whatever he said he was going to do. I want to stay at United all along. Has there been an attitude change, do you think, Rob? Is he just... Because there was one moment last night where he was played in down the left side of the box and he crossed to Erikson and it was cut out. And I think, no, Ronaldo always takes that as a shot, even if it's with his left foot. He's come in now. He's still on the bench. He's not making too much noise. Do you think this is a sign that he's just going to have to accept the squad rotation role he's going to be given? Maybe Ten Hag will end up starting him when Antony and Sancho, you know, are on the wings because both can pick out a cross. But what do you make of Ronaldo's attitude at the moment?
I think he's in between a rock and a hard place. So he doesn't really, like, his options are pretty slim, aren't they? So, you know, like, it's either turn up for work and do what you're told, Cristiano, or don't. And I think the thing is, in a World Cup year, again, we talk about this all the time, you know, players trying to impress. Now, Ronaldo doesn't need to impress anyone, does he? But ultimately, if he wants to play games, he's got to conform, or at least do some of that. So I highlighted that as well in my head. I was thinking about it when he did that and he passed that ball, because I actually don't want him passing that ball. I want, when he's in, shoot. Yeah, I don't mind when he's one-on-one with the keeper, wherever he is. He's Cristiano Ronaldo. That's the one thing you know for sure that he's the best at. That's it, yeah? So I didn't actually want him to do that in that moment. But I think it does show a wider acceptance that there are tactics at play here, and he has to be part of those tactics. So, you know, in terms of starting, I cannot see him starting any major Premier League game as it stands, because he simply cannot perform the wider physical function. So that's a problem for him, isn't it? You know, and that's not about saying he's fit or he's unfit. He just cannot do those things. We saw even in that cameo of the game yesterday that when he's running for the ball or running with the ball, his gas tank empties almost instantaneously. That's not a problem for him because he's old. That's what happens with old players. But he's not a runner. He's never been a runner in that way. But I think he's going to have to now conform to it. He looked a little bit less miserable on the bench yesterday than maybe the game before and the game before. And I think we might see that if he sat next to players as good as, say, Casemiro on the bench, I'm sure Casemiro will start matches. And I was really impressed with Casemiro's cameo yesterday. I think he did really well. I think when you look at that, he might then sign and go, well, do you know what? This is not a bench full of kids and me. This is a much better bench, and I'm willing to play my part. I'm still getting paid my money. And hey, I've only got to do it for half an hour rather than 90 minutes. It means that I can save some in the tank for the next match. So all of that will come into it now. And I think Ten Hag's totally right about the squad and about Ronaldo's usage. And I think Cristiano's just got to get on with it. You know, he didn't get the move he wanted. He's not in the Champions League this year. So try and help Man United win some games maybe. And then in a year's time, if you're so desperate to go to a Napoli or a, you know, Sporting Lisbon or wherever you want to go, then you can go in a year. And I wouldn't be surprised actually if he's out the door, say around January, because there's always that potential that if he plays all right this season, that someone will want him. You know, he's still a goal scorer, isn't he? How much he can help United this year, I think that's debatable. I think he will have a bench role.
But it's a good, strong prospect to bring off the bench if you're struggling
Happy.
and in need of a goal and got a team pinned in, you know,
And
you're
yesterday you saw
pushing
it,
for a
didn't
goal.
you? You saw Rashford's performance tailed off, and it felt like that. And you thought, right, so how do you make the changes here? Right, I'm going to push Rashford left because he can run that channel. He'll be fine with that. Sancho was ready to come off. You could see his game was run, and it gave United a structure to still operate within. Took your press away, but it still meant you had enough runners on the pitch around Cristiano. So then this is where the manager will have to be smart and cute with it, and to be able to make sure that when he comes on, it doesn't mean United's game plan completely collapses. And I thought he did okay. You came on, he did his job. I think if he'd shot that and put it in the back of the net, it'd be a slightly different story today. We were saying, yeah, this is his role now, and 20-minute, 25-minute cameos for Rashford or Martial coming in through the centre. He can do that job for a short space of time, but you can't start the game with Cristiano because you have to start the game as you mean to go on, and he will not press. He can't press, and you need players that can do that.
Yeah, so United are up to 5th. It's a long way from the bottom, which is where they were a couple of weeks ago after the Brentford game. There's a different feeling at the moment, and while it's nowhere near finished, we're nowhere near the finished article. Obviously, there are some foundations that are starting to be built, and you plonk Casemiro on top of the centre-back pairing, and that becomes, well, once everyone's fit and up and running, that becomes a stronger prospect.
Definitely, but I think you're seeing already that with some tactics, Scott McTominay looks like a bit of a footballer. So he doesn't
Crazy,
look well.
isn't it?
It doesn't look like he's not world class. But again, we've just talked here about the balance between energy and doing stuff on a football pitch. If you say to Scott McTominay, I do not expect you to be the player that passes the ball forward all of the time, and you can give it to those better players around you. The key here is Christian Eriksen. So Christian Eriksen won man of the match in here, which I thought was a bit strange. I didn't think he was man of the match. I thought that in the first half, he gave you kind of Paul Scholes vibes. And that was, I'm going to drift around, and when the ball comes to me, I'm just never going to give it away. So I'll slow the game down, I'll speed it up, I'll make all the right decisions. Great. That's what you bought Christian Eriksen for. But having Christian Eriksen allows Scott McTominay to be more economical. And I don't think this is what Man United fans have bought into for a while. Casemiro came on for that last 20, 25 minutes. I thought he was superb. Really good decision maker, energy, coverage,
Calm.
but calm and a ball player. Like when he gets the ball in tight areas, he's like, yeah, have you seen how many Champions Leagues I've won? I can pass the ball. I'm not an idiot. And just playing very simple stuff. And you're out, aren't you? Because you made 3 good passes, and suddenly you're on a really good press, and you're counter attacking. So that was good because you saw that. But I think this is the whole thing about Fred and McTominay is that we won't talk too much about them. We know why United fans don't like them, but they can help you if there are other players on the pitch helping them. And this is kind of where I think it will all kind of mesh together over the next few weeks. Casemiro will without doubt be a starter. You can see that he's going to be a leader of the football club. You haven't spent that kind of money for him to be a super sub. But it's just acclimatization, isn't it? Just bringing him in and giving him time to get used to his new surroundings. I think he's going to be a superb player.
Yeah. So any other comments you want to leave on the Leicester game, Rob, or should we move on and look forward?
No, not really, not comments. But do you know how I feel about it, Scott? Is that watching the games, is that I'm just going into it with a complete open mind. I don't go into the game with any expectation. My only thing is here, I'd like to see some good football. That's all I think. United are on a football pitch. We've got some decent footballers. Go and play some football. And this is what we weren't getting last year, is that you had all these stars, or whatever they want to call themselves, not playing football. So this is all I want to see now, because if you play well, you will get the rewards. And there'll be games when you might play well and lose. But if you play well and lose, we'll go, all right, well, you take it on the chin. That's just how it is. So I think that it's going to Leicester still have to do a job. Man United last year probably wouldn't win this game. Again, I keep saying it's a bit like the Southampton match. They go there, they wouldn't have the intestinal fortitude, as I call it. You wouldn't be able to do that, go on a football pitch and win that game against a team pushing. Leicester pushed in the second half. But a good victory, 1-0, you move on to the next match.
Yeah, nice tee up. They go from playing the bottom team in the league to the top team in the league. Arsenal are looking decent at the moment. They have a few injury problems in midfield. But I have a slight concern the Thursday, Sunday turnaround. And given how players are, they've started to look a little bit leggy and Arsenal have had that extra day's rest. But I feel like this is a really good test for both teams, actually. It's a really good test for both teams. I think Arsenal haven't really had a big team to dispatch yet. And United have to continue and back up the statement that they made against Liverpool with another performance against a team who are playing, some of the best football in the league at the moment. So your initial thoughts on the Arsenal game, Rob, because it'll be a tough one, but how are you feeling? Confident or...
I don't know if confident is the word, but putting the bricks together and looking at the wall that's built in front of you, I think Man United will have no fear in this game at all. They've just beaten Liverpool with a really good performance. They've won 3 on the bounce, and they won't care that Arsenal are top of the league. They just will not. They'll go there to go and do their own work and their own stuff. Now, Arsenal have had a great start to the season. You can see how Arteta is building that project, and it's solid and it's good, and there's a lot more positive things to come for Arsenal fans, no doubt about that. But I think coming to Old Trafford, this could be where their season hits a little bit of the skids early on, because I think United will outwork them in certain parts of the park. I think they will. I think they've got that. I think United have still got that Casemiro factor to come into the team that give them more midfield control. And Arsenal, even though they've won these opening matches, they've not been perfect. I've watched every minute of their games, and they are also a development project still, even though they're at the top of the league. It's just that they're maybe a year ahead of Man United, aren't they? And they've also had a good transfer window. So again, I think the expectations of the game for United is to win. It doesn't matter who you're playing now. Go to Old Trafford, you've got to win these matches. And I think that they will be able to close Arsenal's game down more than, say, the opponents that have played Arsenal so far. United will have that control and that work ethic. And we've got to see it again, haven't we? So it's going to be an interesting game. But I think you've got to go in now with the attitude of winning every match. You've got to go there. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You can't say, oh, well, this, that, and the other. Man United haven't really got any injuries as it stands. I think Martial is the big exclusion. Like, if you get him back, that really helps your attack. But overall, there's positive parts to see from these two football teams. And I don't think Man United will be scared one bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I mean, I want to kind of put it this way. I think we haven't been able to have that feeling about United going into games where, like, over the last couple of years, really, not confident, but like, this is Man United. They should be winning every single game. That's gone. But now it just feels like, 3 wins in a row. You can start to feel like you can bring that feeling back. And this is the first time I've been going into a big game, probably over the last year, thinking, I expect United to win this. Not I'm confident they will, but I expect them to. Like, that's the standard. You have to win this game. Not, oh God, we're going to lose this one 5-0.
Yeah, and it's not even the victories, it's the game management and the philosophy. So that Ten Hag's philosophy just will not change now. This is what Ten Hag does. He's not going to go in there and say, oh, it's Arsenal today, so let's just play a low block and completely rip up what we've been practicing now for 12 weeks. Not going to happen. United are going to put their best foot forward. They might have to mitigate in some positions because that's normal. You might have to do something different to look after 1 or 2 of Arsenal's midfield players, or a Saka or a runner or whatever. But overall, Man United are going to do Man United things. So that's why I think that confidence comes from, Scott. And it's quiet confidence, isn't it? Because you kind of go, right, you've got the tools. You're showing that you've got the dexterity to do it. Now just go and do it. Go on, do your training, get on a football pitch, do it again. Repetition, repetition, repetition. So United have got the quality to do that now. And I think, we'll talk more about the transfer window in a bit. But overall, I think the window was good. It means that you brought in players in key positions. Can you carry on improving? Yes, you can. No doubt about it. But Arsenal shouldn't really hold any fear for this Manchester United team. Arsenal are not miles ahead of Man United in terms of skill or technique. It's just that they're more together because their project has been going longer.
So Ten Hag's been a little bit hesitant to change the team in the last couple of games, to some fans' actual frustration, especially ahead of the Leicester game. I know that I wanted to see Casemiro start last night, but he didn't. Will he start this time? And obviously, United have signed Antony as well. What do you expect Ten Hag to do with him? He said he needs to have a couple of days training and then we'll decide. But I feel like he would really add something in Elanga's position. But I don't know. He's not been wholly ready to just throw people straight in as of yet.
Personally, I think that Ten Hag's done exactly the right thing with selection. You stick with it. Changing winning teams when you're trying to find a way to win consistently is not smart. So you might buy players so obviously Antony's the big signing, the biggest signing of transfer day history. Yay, Man United have won the transfer window again. They'll be very happy about that. But more importantly about that overall is that Man United have now got options. So it's about being able to build into that. So Antony and Casemiro will undoubtedly be starters through the season and beyond, and you hope that that's a success. But do I think he should change the team for Arsenal? Absolutely not. No, because these little tweaks are what lose you games and what lose you momentum. Stick with a winning formula. I want to see exactly the team start against Arsenal. Exactly the same team. And then you change it as you need it. You might find that Casemiro is now ready to start, but then who drops out? Do you drop McTominay out? That's the obvious one, isn't it? That you take Scotty out, you bring in Casemiro, and that's not too much of a big reach. But he might look at his midfield and say, well, Scott McTominay is giving me the energy in there, and I still need that. I need an energy player in there. So do I drop out an Erikson? Or even more crazy, do you drop out a Bruno and push Erikson higher up the pitch? There is now that option. United haven't had that option in recent years. Bruno just starts because he's Bruno. So it'll be interesting to see what the selection is, but I really, really hope that he just sticks with it and doesn't make too many changes. One change maybe at most. I will be really shocked if Antony starts the game. I really cannot see it. I think he needs to be on the bench for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks. He needs to kind of, again, acclimatise to Manchester United. It would be bad for him, I think, to go into the Arsenal game with all that weight on his back. I'm sure he'd love it. I'm sure he wants to make his debut, but I think you need to be patient.
What if Martial is fit?
Well, Martial, to me, already is a starter. So Martial not starting is not because you're trying to stick to a formula. It's just because he's injured. So if you look at that front four, it kind of picks itself week to week if Martial is fit. If Martial's not fit, you're only tweaking the personnel. You're not tweaking systems or philosophies. So it's undoubted that Ten Hag wants to play this season as Martial as a 9. Undoubted. So when he's fit and he shows it in training that he's fit, he probably starts. So this is what I mean about changing things only 1 or 2 players at a time, Scott, because I think Ole didn't used to do it. Ralph tried to do it. And you see it happen at Man City all the time, where we talk about tons of rotation. And if you're Man City, fine, you can get away with it. Man United can't get away with it. You can't, not yet. Eventually, you might be able to. So only bring in those 1 or 2. So I would rather see Martial play if he's fit than Antony. I really would. So you bring Martial in because that helps Rashford, that helps Sancho, that helps Bruno. So those things are kind of, I think, cemented and set in stone and are not rotational pieces. They're the foundations of the rock. So I hope that Martial's fit because I think he brings so much more to that front line. I was thinking in the second half yesterday was that when Rashford the ball was just bouncing off his shins every 5 minutes. I was thinking that doesn't happen with Martial. Martial will control that ball, move it on, or turn and dribble into the space, but not dribble erratically. He'll dribble into there and maybe check and bring in someone else with him. Rashford still struggles with that. We know he does. He's not the most technical in that area. Good first half, but second half, you could see that as the tank emptied, he became less useful. But he will also undoubtedly, I think, start against Arsenal.
United play Arsenal Sunday afternoon in the Premier League. I believe it's the 4:30 game. We will see. 4:30 UK time. I know we have people listening in different countries. But, just for once, let us know in the comments how you're feeling about that game ahead of time. If you're starting to take a little bit of confidence, we won't do a prediction, Rob, because, we've tried that before, unless you want to.
I think we should expect a victory. I think we should expect it. I think this is where we have to go and live now. We have to live in that world of not last year or the year before or the last 10 years. We have to say, right, if you've spent that amount of money, you should be expecting to win football matches.
we'll leave it at that. Let's move on to the transfer window rated, because the transfer window is now closed. United have had a busy one. Erratic, weird at times, bizarre. But actually, when you strip all of the context away and you look at the 6 players they've signed, Antony, Casemiro, Martinez, Erikson, Malacia, and Dubravka, it's decent. It's actually decent in terms of what United needed, where their squad was at the start of the season, where it was last season. There's the thing that jumps out of me really is the areas they've managed to strengthen in right through the core of the team, maybe not up front, but Casemiro and Martinez, you'd expect them to be solid picks. Christian Eriksen offers you something in midfield that United didn't have. Antony is an answer on the right side, which they haven't had for forever. And then you've got a couple of supplementary signings as well. Malacia, I think, has been, I would say a revelation, but he's made a solid start, and there's plenty to build off with him. So how do you want to play this one then, Rob? Because should we make an overall comment about the transfer window and then dig into the players individually?
Yeah, let's do the players individually. And as I said, when we talked about this off air, I said really we should give each signing 2 gradings. And what I meant by that was 1 for the player, for their quality of how good they are, how they're going to help Man United. So that's 1 grade. But then a grade for the finance behind those deals. Because as we've said, and I've said before, Man United, as a fan, I don't care about how much money they spent. Just go buy the right players. If you spend a lot of money, so be it. We're supposed to be one of the richest football clubs in the world. So there is that. But I think there is this correlation. And I think fans quite often talk about price and value, again, in a maybe a football manager type of way, where they go, oh, he's worth this, or fantasy football. And it's not really real, is it? So it's kind of, it's not in the industry itself. So we'll talk about, I think, the players, and then talk maybe about an overall, how good the window was. But I think we kind of look at those 2 elements because they're the most important elements in any transfer window.
Let's go from most recent to least, I guess. Yeah. Should we start with Martin Dubravka? we can brush past this one quite fast, I think.
The big signing.
The big signing on loan from Newcastle.
Yeah.
Martin Dubravka. What did you give them? I think this grade was the same for both, wasn't it?
For Dubravka, I gave the player himself a C. So we're going old school here in terms of how you grade stuff. This is not the new.
You even put A stars in some of these.
I did. I really.
Do they do A stars in school anymore?
They do A stars, but it's not really an A star. They call it something else now, and then that's equivalent of an A star. So okay. In old money, it is what it is. But for Dubravka, I think the player himself, he's not a bad goalkeeper. He doesn't really push the envelope, does he? It's more of a filler because you lost Henderson, who now will play every week at Nottingham Forest. So I gave him a C, and I gave the deal itself a C. We're looking at a kind of value of around 2 million up front, potentially 6 million with a trigger clause to buy the player if he plays a certain amount of games. I'm all right with that. Obviously, the least interesting of all the signings this season. But it means that now if De Gea goes and gets an injury, that you're not relying on Tom Heaton. No offense to Tom Heaton. He's not Premier League standard anymore. He's decent to have around the place, a good influence in the goalkeeping ranks. But I think Dubravka, someone who'll sit on the bench every week, and he'll help United if they get injuries.
I agree. Let's move past. I mean, maybe you'll see Dubravka in some League Cup games, but I think David De Gea it's going to be the main choice. It's going to be a big year for De Gea. I also looked at the amount of players out of contract in a year's time. Maybe we'll leave that for another show. I think we might run out of time today. There's a lot of players out of contract, but United have an option to trigger on all of the contracts. There's a potential opportunity for a lot of turnover there. But let's move on to the most expensive signing of the summer, Antony from Ajax. This one, important to kind of stress that this was the player that Ten Hag wanted for this position. It took them a hell of a long time, and it took them a hell of a lot of money to pull it off. But I would actually, what have you given the player here? Because I might strain towards an A- actually, because I really like him.
I've given him a B-, and I've given the deal itself a C-. So do you want me to explain why I think those things?
Yes, go on.
Right. I like Antony. I think, he's the player I wanted. I really liked him all the way through. I think when Ten Hag came and you were eyeing Ajax talent, he was definitely the one. It was like, can you go and get him and bring him with the manager? Well, the answer to that is yes. The reason why I give him a B minus, Scott, is that as good as he is and all the potential that he's got, he is not the finished article. Nowhere near. His stats show that. His metrics show that. Everything shows that. What you're buying here is potential. So I'm saying B minus because I don't believe that Antony is going to be the guy that gets Man United in the top 4. I don't. I think a good team and him being part of that team will get you where you want to be. But I think when you look at the deal, I've given it a C minus because Man United could have bought him at the start of the window for 65 million quid. They could have, because they were already 20 million over the top. They wanted to pay 45 million. That was the first offer. And Ajax went, no, thank you.
Do you remember when that came out and they were like, oh, they expect to
Yeah.
tie up this deal for 40 million? And we both went, no way.
So this is classic United, isn't it? It's classic United in the window, is that they've now paid 85 million for a player they could have got for 45 million if they'd just gone and done the business quickly. And they've paid double because Ajax have just waited and pushed the price up. And then you get to a point of no return, don't you? Where you have to either pay the money or walk away. So that's why I give the deal itself a C minus, because that's Man United's problems in the transfer market as per usual. But I really like the player, and he's going to give Man United so much value on that right as a player that can dribble with the ball. And, we'll love all the skill and we'll love all of the kind of, in lollipops and cartwheels and everything that he does with the football at his feet. But what's most important is that he's going to improve United's press. He's good on that side. He can really do that. He'll push the ball and he'll push that part of the territory back towards the defense. Sancho doesn't not do that, but Sancho, I think, on the left will be a better balance coming on his right, no doubt. And I think as well that Antony coming in from the right to the left on his left foot, it's just going to open up United's options massively. So especially in the channels and on the wings. So a good signing. As I said, I'm not going to get too pernickety about the cost of the deal, but it's not a great deal, is it? I think when you're spending that kind of money, I think if you want to spend 85 million, and we said this a year ago, you want proven quality, like absolutely proven goal scoring metrics, assists coming out their ears. Do you remember when we signed Angel Di Maria? And he was like, they paid big money for him at the time, but he was the best assister in Europe and the best assister in La Liga by miles. So you're going to pay the money. Antony doesn't have that, not in his pocket yet. So you hope that he becomes a star in a Man United shirt and he gets maybe double digits goals and assists and helps United into that top 4 this year.
I probably agree with your grading. Maybe on the finance side anyway, I think. What do you, C minus?
C minus, because it's average, isn't it? Like, you haven't really done well in the deal. You've lost the deal. Ajax won the deal. So, you'll be happy with the player, and that's why I gave him a B minus. Maybe a B minus. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. He's a really good player, but the deal itself is a horrible deal in financial terms. But you've had to do it because you're horrible. That's the bottom line. So you've had to do it because you were not very good in the negotiations, and you needed good players.
I think it depends how he does when we analyze how effective that deal is, because everyone questioned Liverpool for paying 75. I'm not saying that this is the case at all, but when you pay 75, 80 million for a player and they slot into the team and they improve it, the price doesn't matter if you're a big club. It doesn't matter.
Never matters. So, doesn't matter how much you pay for a player if they're successful. If they're successful, you can pay the moon for them and it will be fun. But if they're a Lukaku, if Lukaku comes from Everton and fails and you sell him 2 years later, or Lukaku goes to Chelsea and he fails and he's back in Italy straight away, that, of course, is a bust, isn't it? But you can only make those choices maybe a year or two down the line.
Yeah. And the confidence I have in this deal is I know what Ten Hag's job is. I know what the expectations are from him to come in and improve the squad of players that has been underperforming for a long time. And now he's brought one of the players that he already knows his system with him to United.
Yeah.
So I feel like that progress can continue with him and set a good example for the others as well. So I like this deal I actually really do. I know it's got a lot of stick, but I'm very excited. He's probably might be my favorite signing of the summer, I think. Even ahead of Lisandro Martinez. I do quite like that one. But let's move on to Casemiro, because I know that we did a whole show on this, on the cost of this deal. You know, but I look at the 6 names there. I look at the context, and I see Antony 22, Malacia 21, 22, Martinez mid-20s, Erikson and Casemiro at 30. United need that little bit of extra experience in the midfield, and I think they've, as much as they stumbled upon this deal, I think having Casemiro for the next couple of years. I know they've given him 5 years of it, is it, or 4 years plus 1? I forget. It's good to have an experienced winner with that kind of attitude coming into this team. We've already seen it in his small cameos that he just brings that extra bit of calm and steel and ability to pass the ball, which I forgot what it's like to see a midfielder be able to pass the ball effectively. How do you rate Casemiro?
So again, we'll stick to the same kind of line of player grade and financial grade. And this is where it gets wild, because this is all about Man United, how they do their business. So Casemiro is a world-class central midfielder. So I've given him an A-. I could have given him an A, really, especially what he's achieved in the game. I give him an A- because I think in terms of adaptation, he's still going to have to show that he can do the Premier League grind week in, week out. He should be able to. He's that kind of player. But a top player, fantastic A-. The deal I've given an E. An E. Why have I given it an E? Because it's a stinking deal for someone of his age bracket, of his potential long term. You've bought that player at that price of what equates to about 150 odd million. Like, it's a mad deal when you look at wages, incentives, the price that you've paid Real Madrid. And Real Madrid have bitten your hand off of that, because Real Madrid are not like, this player's not good. They've gone, what? You're willing to pay what? Okay, let's do the deal. So United have been forced into that situation to do that. Why have they been forced? Because they didn't get Frankie de Jong. So this is where they were. So United triggered that deal because they needed a midfielder. I think Casemiro is going to be a raging hit at Man United. And like we said, as time goes on, I don't think anyone's going to be talking about his price tag if he's successful, because that is, that's what you want. You want a player coming, you don't want to talk about price. But the deal itself, Scott, I don't think any club in the world does this deal. Only Man United. Only Man United, because of their desperation and what they need in midfield, and because they've not bought a midfielder since forever. They lost Paul Pogba and went, we'll get Frankie de Jong then, that'll be all right, and then spent all summer getting a player they haven't got. Casemiro fills a big gap for Man United, especially in leadership and personality. That's where I see this. I see as someone who can come into the team and help the team. But A- for the player. The deal itself is a bad deal in terms of just pure money. It will be a good deal if we come out of this in 2 or 3 years' time and say Casemiro was a raging hit.
I'm going to give it a D. I think I'm with you on the A for the player himself. I'm going to give it a D, just because of the necessity, I guess. Like, when I looked at the de Jong deal and Ten Hag wanting to play de Jong as the 6, because I think that's what he wanted. I just still worried a little bit that they didn't have that steal. And I like the profile that Casemiro has. And ultimately, it's a hell of a lot of money. But I'm looking at it through glass half full again. It makes a change for me over the last 2 years. I'm hoping this one and Ten Hag can maximize the ability of this player, say potential with other players like Antony and Malacia. But there is a proven winner here. And he should hopefully fill that gap for a few years. And obviously it's a short-term purchase, but hopefully his experience, his know-how can be within the squad for a few years and help guide the younger players who need a bit of guidance towards better times. Christian Erikson, for you.
Christian Erikson. So let's do the grade straight away then. So player, B-. The deal, A*. It's an A* deal. You've paid nothing to get a top diverse midfield attacking talent. And this was, I was really high on Erikson at Brentford. And I was like, as soon as his deal's finished at Brentford, United should jump in. And I went bang that drum and I pushed and pushed and pushed. And thankfully, that's where it went. Because when you look at Erikson already in this short window of what he's done, I say B- because it's so rare to have a player that can play the 6, 8, and 10 roles and kind of just fit seamlessly into them. Like Bruno tries to do those roles, tries to do like 6, 8, and 10, and just is so wildly different in different parts of the park, isn't he, in terms of his usage, where I think Erikson doesn't have that problem. I'd rather see Erikson play higher up the pitch, of course, for his creativity. But I think as a player, there's no doubt about him. Premier League proven. I said B-. I could have given him a B, could have even given him an A-. And the deal itself, not every deal falls into your lap like this one, a free transfer, someone who's a free agent. But you're not going to get a better player at that price range. And that means, for me, it's an A-star. And this is the balancing point, Scott. So if you've overpaid for Casemiro, you've overpaid for Antony, you've got a player like Erikson for nothing, pretty much. So this is, I think, where you balance out whether a window is successful or not.
I'm with you on the grades, actually. I do think there is a little bit of concern for me with, I know we spoke about this on the last show, with Erikson having to play 90 minutes all the time. I still feel like there's another player that needs to come in with the same qualities as him that should rotate. And this is why I was pushing De Jong. But it got to a point where that wasn't going to happen. But I don't think that pursuit is over by any means. We'll see how his season plays out with Barca. And we'll see how United manage to progress. Maybe United will have more luck in a future transfer window, because I think they've put a lot of time and a lot of effort in. I don't know if you saw Ten Hag's post-match hit to BT, where he said there was like 45 minutes of the transfer window to go. And he said, if an opportunity comes, we will strike. He said that throughout the summer, but he said that with a bit of laugh, tongue in cheek. But he said, it's over for now, but we still have work to do. So he knows that. And I think De Jong is the one that he wants,
And it gives United now time between now and the next window to just go and do the scouting. So, yeah, you can wait for De Jong, but don't be foolish and wait forever. This cannot be your next Wesley Sneijder. It cannot be that. You can't do that. Like United back in the day when they, were going for Sneijder, they didn't really move the needle to go and get someone else, not someone of that quality. So don't wait for De Jong if De Jong is happy sunning it at Barcelona, not getting paid. That's up to him, isn't it, mate? Off you go. Go find other midfielders. There's plenty of good midfielders in Europe that can help you play pressing football, play counter-pressing, play possession. Loads of them. Just go and find them. Go scout them and find what you need. So I think you're right. I think United will revisit that in January. But I also think that probably De Jong will renegotiate his contract. They'll find some structural payment. Barcelona will probably lie to him, say, oh, we'll pay you this in a year. And then a year will come along and it'll be the same thing. Man United will be knocking on the door. We'll all be going, this is terrible. Here we go again. I don't want United to wait for players. Go and do your business. Go get decent players for your squad. Go win football matches. And we can then forget about the kind of fluff around players like Frankie de Jong.
Lisandro Martinez, then. I have a feeling you'll like this one. Maybe not the money. Yeah. But you like the player?
Yeah, I like the player. Look, I've seen a lot of Martinez at Ajax and had my own opinions about him. I wasn't sure when United first knocked on the door for him and said, is he the right player? I wasn't bothered about his height. I've never been bothered about his height, because when you look at his heading metrics, they're better than any Man United player in the existing squad. So I'm not worried about those things. I've given him these two grades here. I've given him the grade for the player I've given as a B, because I don't think he's the perfect centre-back, but I think he's the kind of personality you need now, right now. You need a warrior. You've bought a warrior. You've put him in your team. He starts. The deal itself, again, when you look at price, United played, I think, probably top back for him. So I've given it a C-. But this is one where I think we will never talk about price ever again. Because if he plays well, 55 million is just a drop in the water. That's below the kind of money that Chelsea are trying to play for very average players. Like Cucurella costs that kind of price from Brighton. They were willing to take a young lad for Everton for more money than that. It would be a pure development project. So I think overall, this is kind of, again, the sweet spot where you get a player that has a high value, but not so high that you're too worried about it. it's not a £150 million deal, is it? Where he might only have 2 or 3 years left. I think Martinez really could become the spiritual leader of Manchester United. I really do believe that. I think he's the guy that's going to put his neck on the block and really kind of push the team in those moments. He's the one doing the high fives, at the back when there's defensive actions. He's going up to people, punching them in the chest, grabbing them by the face, giving them kisses and hugging them and kind of going crazy, all because Diogo Dalot actually made a successful tackle. That's good. I like that. You need that kind of leadership. And I think Varane likes him as well. You can see that Varane is comfortable with him inside of him with a left foot. Overall, a really, really, really good signing.
I agree with your grades on Martinez. I think I'm right there with you. I really like him, but he's just, there was a moment last night where I think he fouled Jamie Vardy and got booked. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, I just love that in the nicest possible way.
And United fans singing Argentina, Argentina, Argentina. It just brings back memories of good stuff. So, like, this is what I mean, with seeing him go up to the fans and then respond to him. He's the kind of player that you want. Like, this deal could be an A-star deal at the end of the season. End of the season, we might be going, that's what we needed. We needed a player like that. And that's changed everything because you've now got this player that leads and kind of gives you those qualities. So I like him already. I didn't care that first. When we lost to Brentford, I didn't think anything of it that way. I didn't think, this is a bust already. And people were like, oh, he's only 5'2". What's going on here? No, he's not 5'2". He's tall enough. He can run. He can fight. He can really be the guy that means that badge on the shirt, he'll represent it really well.
Brings balance to the defense, brings a bit of toughness that United have lacked and that they need. And he's flanked by Tyrell Malacia. I'm going to give this one an A, Rob, in terms of the price, because I think this might be the first time that Man United have spotted a bargain that will, what was he, 14, 15 million? Yeah. They brought him in. He's already the starter ahead of Luke Shaw. Yeah. And in a year, 2 years' time, his value could inflate. This is a very exclusive club that United have been buying expensive players for a long time and just losing value on these players. I think Malacia is probably the first example, and I want to see more of these signings. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know how good he is yet, really. I don't know how good he can be, but it's a good start. And I feel like more of these players with the right attitude, the right profile, good quality as well. He's good on the ball. I feel like United need to make more of these signings over the next few years and integrate them in the first team squad. Because if this was, let's take Brighton as an example. If Brighton has signed Tyrell Malacia and he slotted in there as say Marc Cucurella's replacement, if Brighton had signed him and he was playing the way he started for United, he'd be worth 50 million in a couple of years to a bigger club. That's how.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Look, I gave the deal an A. I think 15 million or around that price is just peanuts in today's market. If he is successful, he'll be a £50 million fullback overnight. If he does well the next 6 months. I'd like to see United do these deals. Why? Because this is what other good clubs do. You go and find talent, and then you might pay a premium for them at that level. Look what City do. They will go and buy players. Julian Alvarez, a complete superstar in Argentina already, a hero at one of the biggest clubs in the country in River Plate, and they've bought him for literally nothing. And he sits on their bench, and he played the other day and scored twice. That's what you have to do to formulate a squad. So with Malacia, I've given him as a player a B so far because I think he's played okay as he's come in. I don't think he's anywhere near perfect. I think actually some of the Premier League stuff that goes on the pitch, he struggled with a little bit. Even last night, I think he is a technical player that can come inside and invert and do those things, what you want a fullback to do. But you can see he's still learning the Premier League on the fly. So this is why I think that if Luke Shaw comes back, finds a way back into the team, that you might find him and actually doesn't actually play as much as you want. I think that might happen. I think Luke Shaw comes back in and goes, culture shock. I've got to do more, like he did when Tellers turned up. I've got to push my own performances. I've got to run a little bit more. I've got to overlap. I've got to come inside a little bit more, be technically better. Then I still think that weighing the two players up, just today, Luke Shaw is still the better player. but Malacia is going to give him a run for the money. Malacia is going to say, I want to get in that World Cup squad for Holland. I want to play. This manager knows me. I know this manager, and watch me push. So I think that he again, like Martinez, is just all about energy, isn't he? He's about that, I've got an attitude. Don't you saw again in the second half when things were falling apart, it was Malacia going up to players, pointing fingers in their faces, going, you need to get over there because when I've got the ball, you need to give me width. I love that. Great. That's what he wants. He's taking responsibility. So let's see how he goes. I think if he develops again, this is going to be an A-star deal. It's going to be like that. He really reminds me of Patrice Evra in terms of his output, of how he plays, his attitude. And he's a leader. Again, you've bought another leader, but you bought him for like 15 million, Scott. There is value in the market. I hate all this stuff about you can't get players for good prices. They are out there. Just go scout them. You got this player because Erik Ten Hag liked him from the Ajax days and before. And you probably would have seen him at Ajax this year if you'd seen that Ten Hag stayed at Ajax. They probably would have bought him for 15 million. And then in a year's time, Man United would be trying to buy him for 50 million. So you got in there early. And this is what you need to do now. You need to have a system that helps you bring in this type of player.
If you would like to play transfer window grading, head over to our YouTube channel and leave a comment. The Promised Land of Manchester United podcast is where you can find us. If you haven't subscribed already, leave a comment on your gradings. If you want to do a grade for the player themselves, or if you want to do like we've done here, a grade for the player and a grade for the price, feel free. But let's grade the window as a whole, Rob, because the transfer window has closed. What would you give Man United and their business on the whole?
Well, doing total grades is difficult, but we'll try. I think at the end of the day, if you've got De Jong, this is an A window. Yeah, if you get De Jong, you're happy. You got everything you really wanted, all that you desired. But you didn't get De Jong, but you did get Casemiro. Casemiro really wasn't on the list at the early days. He certainly wasn't scouted. You knew who he was. You didn't really have to think about him. I think it's a kind of B minus at the moment, because I think that in the first instance, you can't get everything you want for a new manager. You never can. You can only get some of the bigger pieces and maybe some of the squad pieces. And they've done that. All 6 of those players, and I think if you take Dubravka out of it, it's not really interesting, Dubravka. But you look at the other 5, those 5 can be starters, viable starters for the weeks and months ahead. You just said there about rotation and about players like Erikson and all of this. I don't have a problem with that. I'm the opposite. I don't want to see rotation. I want to see consistency. These players, as physical entities, can play 90 minutes, 65 minutes over a week to week to week. Yeah. So if Erikson, you don't want him to play 90 minutes, 20 games in a row, but you don't want that for any player, do you? So I think there will be some rotation, especially with the Europa League coming up and then the cup competitions. But overall, I think it's a kind of B minus. But do you know what? If you come top 4, it's an A-star window. If this really helps you and pushes you to where you want to be, we're looking at all those players, and if they're all successes, we're going to look back at this window and look back at it completely different to the last window where you won the window. Sancho, Ronaldo, you got all of the stars in. Varane. It was an A-star window when it finished, but at the end of the season, it was an E or an F. It was a fail, wasn't it? You didn't get anywhere. You sacked your manager and you had to start again. So a good window today might not be a good window tomorrow, but might also be a sensational window come the end of the season.
B minus for me. I think there are players who United have signed. I really appreciate that they've now addressed problem positions on the right-hand side, defensive midfield, centre-back as well, and they have a creative midfielder in Christian Eriksen, and added a little bit of competition because Malacia isn't upgrading Alex Telles.
God.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's really important, isn't it? Is that you start buying 2 players for a position, because I think that's what United didn't do over many, many years. And it means now that if Luke Shaw isn't doing it for whatever reason, like you don't know what it is, it could be fitness, health, could just be bad form. You got someone that you're actually happy to start. And I think that this is the problem. Now, United need to probably do that on the right back position, because if Wan-Bissaka doesn't make strides now and you've kept Wan-Bissaka, then you need those options, don't you? I said that United need to still go out and buy a world-class right back eventually, at some point in the next windows, because you need that competition. You need 2 players for every position.
I think you identified 4 positions. I agreed with everyone. They would have been the positions that I picked as well. We'll talk about that in another show, though. The only reasons why I've gone B- on the window, couple expensive cost. I feel like United have, dithered as they usually do, and they've overpaid for 3 of those players as it stands. Antony, Casemiro, and Martinez, they've overpaid for. And I would also grade it down for the public nature in which it was played out and the Frankie de Jong pursuit, which is ultimately they failed to bring Frankie de Jong in, who was the number 1 target for the entire summer. And the jumps between Rabiot, Arnautovic to Casemiro,
thank God we didn't get any of those. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is like,
this is what it could have been.
It's kind of like they were just dangling it in front of us, going, well, you could get this, or you could be even less happy than you are. But no, I've said, I wrote during the Ranić era, when Ranić was talking about recruitment and, he was getting quite deep about it, wasn't he, in press conferences. I said at the time that Man United are going to have to spend $500 million to refit the squad, because it's literally like you're refitting so much of it. People have said to me now in the last few weeks, but weren't you the one going on about youth? Yes, I'm still going to go on about youth. I'm still, when we're talking about rotation squad, I still want to see Zidane and Savage in there at some point. But the good thing is that you've now got the foundations. 250 million in this transfer window is a hell of a lot of money, but ultimately you just had no choice but to spend it. Certainly when you lost 12 players, outgoing 12 players. Now, they were all rubbish, let's be honest. They didn't do what you wanted them to do, but the quality that was in that group, you absolutely needed to replace. I think they've done that just about. So that's why I would say B- today, because it means that you can start football matches with a decent football team out there. And I think that you've brought in a bunch of brand new leaders. And that's I think the most important part of this project in the early days.
Yeah, United have more business to do, but obviously this transfer window is now over. It will be back open in January. I think they're going to go back for Jurriën Timber at some point. Poor Ajax.
Do you know what? I think about Mr. Timber yesterday, and now things have happened, and he was the first one to turn United down. And I think in that moment, he's looking at it and he's going, oh, I've got Louis van Gaal in my ear going, don't go, you got to play games and blah, 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 blah. Now I've signed a new contract with Ajax. And oh my God, now all my teammates have left. So this is a problem now. Now he's carrying the football club on his own. I think you're right. I think Man United, if they do want to right back, and it's just said about having a world-class option there, Timber, I'm not saying he's world-class yet, but come January, even though he signed this new deal, he will be very available and very willing. And especially Man United are playing well. And he then looks at it and goes, I should have not listened to Louis, and I'm in the squad anyway, because he ain't got any choice. And I'd like to play in the Premier League and earn a few £100,000 a week. Those are all very, very kind of seductive elements to a footballer. So I think you're right. I think he still might be the right back solution for Man United long term. And it might not be very long until he arrives.
Yes, we'll talk on another show, Rob, about the positions they need to address in future. I think you established them as goalkeeper, right back, central midfield, and striker. I absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a
core
lot of spending.
Signings.
Core signings. It's a lot of spending, but they have to be great, solid players.
Totally, but we've just proved it, haven't we? You can go and find a Malacia at 15 million. Well, I said the next spend, not necessarily in January, but I think in the next 2 windows, is going to have to be between 200 and 300 million again. Why? Because you're buying at that level. If you want an Osimhen, you have to pay for it. Yeah. If you want someone at that level, you will have to pay for it. But you know what? City have just gone and revolutionised their attack with a £55 million signing called Haaland. So you can do that, but they're supplemented in with an Alvarez. So United have to be smart now in these next 2 windows. But yeah, we'll talk more about that obviously in the future. We'll go into depth. Hopefully, we're saying, wow, this squad's really done it this season. And we're only having to go maybe buy 1 or 2. Go get that sweeper keeper maybe and that striker, because Ronaldo's now out the door. And then you might be able to go and shop in the Malacia basket in the supermarket rather than just having to go and buy everyone at 50 or 60 million plus.
One final question before we wrap up. Jimmy Garner has joined Everton.
Yes.
Fans are not happy with that. Where do you stand?
Jimmy Garner did really well on loan, obviously at Forest last year. He's proved that he's worth a shot in the Premier League. With the signings that you've made, does Jimmy Garner play any minutes for Man United? Probably not. Probably plays Europa League now and then, Carling Cup, League Cup type things, any of those competitions. If you can get 15 million for a player that you can't use, you go do that business, don't you, Scott? If you've just spent 250 or 225 million, you can't keep everyone. And this is how, we've said this again before. So I like Jimmy Garner, but I don't actually think that his skill set befits what Man United essentially need in that central midfield at the moment. I think populism-wise, United fans would have liked to have seen McTominay get sold and Garner be retained. But why? That's just populism. The manager's looking at the metrics and going, Scott McTominay, he runs like a dog. He'll fight. He'll kill people for me. But Jimmy Garner, that's not really his game. I don't need Jimmy Garner for that. So what happens? Jimmy Garner goes to Everton. James Garner is he's from Merseyside. So this is a kind of return home for him. So I think he's happy about that. He's very happy with the deal. We've heard this. I'm not upset about it. Players come and go, and you support the football club over that. So I think that for 15 million, better than him just sit, on our bench or go out on loan again. Because then, if he has a bad loan, his value becomes nothing. We just sold Tav Chong for 1.5 million to Birmingham, and it was only 2 years ago that they had 10 and 15 million pound offers for him on the table, and they didn't take it because they just went and sent him out on loan to the Bundesliga or wherever. So take the deal when you sometimes need it. Can be a shrewd one. You can't develop every player, and I like United's core of youngsters that we've retained.
United do need to get better at selling. Maybe that's another one for another window. But yes, let us know your gradings on all of the signings that United have made. Let us know how you're feeling confidence-wise as Arsenal visit Old Trafford on Sunday. Let us know a grade for the transfer window as a whole as well. And let us know anything you'd like us to talk about on future shows. But thank you very much for listening today. Just a reminder, you can subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes. And now you can watch us twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays normally. So head over to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, join the community, leave a comment, and subscribe. And the link, if you're listening on an audio platform, should be in the description of this episode. If you can follow us on Twitter too, that would be great. @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseandMU for the show. Rob, thank you very much. Big game at the weekend. We'll see you.
I'll be there.
Indeed. Wonderful times. 3 wins in a row for Man United. Difference in tone. Hopefully it continues. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you soon.